common sense struggle.
American, young, old, rich, poor.
I'm Judy Strand, and on behalf of the Commission for Senior Services, I welcome you to this great event, the first ever Oregon White House Conference on Aging. Thank you for being here. I'm really honored to represent the Governor's Commission. It is a vital voice of advocacy for all Oregonians, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for the ideas that you're going to bring forward today that are going to inform our nation. I also want to make some special acknowledgments of the sponsors and contributors for today's event. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee. I also need to acknowledge Ann McQueen, who staffed this conference, and I would like her to be identified. Where is Ann? Where is she? There she is. So this would not happen without her, and I want all of you to know that. Believe me, we couldn't have done it. So great gratitude there. I wanted to start by acknowledging the fact that many of our cultures, especially our indigenous cultures, value elders in a way that is exemplary, and that many of our immigrant communities that now live in Oregon are showing us that same example. However, I believe that our dominant culture has not yet caught on, and I think that that has prompted a number of comments from a number of aging advocates. One is Gloria Steinem, who said, "At my age, people often ask me if I'm passing the torch. I explain that I'm keeping my torch, thank you very much, and I'm using it to light the torches of others. Because only if each of us has a torch will there be enough light." So in light of all of that, I wanted to think a little bit about what we're focusing on today. In Seattle at the regional conference, which a few of us had a chance to attend, we talked about a lot of important things: economic security, underpaid caregiver staff, absence of culturally specific and culturally responsive aging, lack of mental health services, lack of geriatric specialists, inadequate transportation, all kinds of issues that all of you know better than I do. And all of those are incredibly important. At the same time, we know that in Oregon, we've been a state with some innovative ideas. We've stepped forward in prevention and community-based care and person-centered practice in a very bold way, and I know that we'll do that again today, and that's why we want to hear your voices. I also would like to challenge us to think beyond just looking at the needs one by one and look at the interconnectedness of the needs and what that might bring to our minds in terms of a creative solution for this growing population of older adults. And what if we looked at the ways we can capitalize on the age wave and view that 1 in 5 of us who will be 65 and older by 2030 as a true untapped resource for our community as a whole? A few years back, I was 15. It was 1971. I heard about Maggie Kuhn, who we know started the Gray Panther movement. And she was really of great interest to me at that time, and I wrote her a letter. And of all things, she wrote back to me. I found her letter recently in my family's home when I was cleaning out the home. And in that letter, she encouraged me to be an advocate and fight ageism. She was, for me, one of those lights, one of those torches. And there was something that I'm sure one of you sent me recently that talked about what older adults could be for us in our society. And Maggie Kuhn said that as risk takers, older adults can change the world. They can humanize society. They have 5 roles that she talked about. They are mentors who teach the young, mediators who resolve civil, racial, and intergenerational conflict, monitors of public bodies who serve as watchdogs of City Hall and Congress, mobilizers of social change, and motivators of a society who urge people away from self-interest and toward public good. Our world desperately needs those 5 roles. And think of it. Think of all the conflicts, the intercultural conflicts, the global issues that affect our planet. This is the time to bring our elders into the public square. And I know when I talk about them, the older adults, I'm looking at a room where we understand that they is we, because we want that place when it's our time to humanize and heal the world. And I hope that today we'll come up with some fantastic ways to do that. Okay, so getting to the nitty-gritty, you have these lovely green folders, and as we go forward, they will guide you, and they are color-coded in everything. So in here, you will see the agenda. You'll see a number of pieces of paper on the right. There are issue brief sheets that are color-coded by each issue that we're talking about today, and that will help give you a little background information. And there are some conference evaluations that are purple, and we really would love to have your feedback about how we're doing with this conference today. So I'd now like to introduce Marty Cahill, the Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital CEO. Since 2013, Marty has been Chief Operations Officer of Samaritan Lebanon Community Hospital and has served as the CEO at Samaritan North Lincoln Hospital and Director of Physician Relations for Samaritan Health Services. We're very thankful for this lovely conference space. So, Marty?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is a great event. Thank you for your participation, and welcome to our event center. We've literally, in the last 2 weeks, opened our hotel. We've got this event center for the last year, so we're starting to utilize it. So let us know how it goes. Give us feedback. We would greatly appreciate that. Again, I'd like to thank you for your participation, the coordinators for this event. I think that your help today will be useful in directing policy and direction for the next 10 years. Some of the things that you're going to be talking about and hearing about today: retirement security, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and elder justice. And I think together we can all build healthier communities, and I believe that the work here today will be heard back in DC by this summer. So I wish you well. If you have time, there's a jam-packed agenda for you today. But if you can get out and take a look at the garden, there's a Japanese healing garden right next to this facility, nice koi pond. So go out and relax a little bit in between your sessions. Have a good day and welcome. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Danny Ledesma from Governor Kate Brown's office. Danny is the governor's Housing and Human Services Policy Advisor, and prior to coming to the governor's office, she served as the Director of Equity, Policy, and Communications at the City of Portland's Housing Bureau. Danny?
Hi, good to see you. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of our Governor, Kate Brown, we'd like to welcome you and thank you for all the work that you're going to do today and that you do every day on behalf of older adults so that to ensure their safety, that they're financially secure, and that their needs are being met. As you know, our communities are stronger, they can thrive when the outcome of the work that you are doing is fulfilled. And as you know, our governor is a strong supporter and champion of the work that you do, and is here to stand shoulder to shoulder with you as we contend with some of the issues that face older adults. So today, as you contend with and discuss and come up with the best and possible ideas around policy change impacting retirement security, healthy aging, elder justice, and long-term supports and services for older Americans, we're really looking forward to the outcome of these conversations that you're having and also how we can support that moving forward. We'd like to thank our hosts that are here, today, all of the keynote speakers and panelists for sharing your wisdom and information with us. And we'd really like to thank the Governor's Commission on Senior Services for your service, your ongoing service and commitment to this issue. We'd like to thank our chair, Judy Strand, and what the governor would like to make sure that you all know is that we're ready to work with you. We've got really strong leaders at the state. Our DHS Director, Erin Kelly Seal, to work with you, and we look forward to continuing this important work. So thank you.
Thanks, Danny. We now get to hear from Erin Kelly Seal, the director of the Oregon Department of Human Services. Erin started as the director in April of 2011, and she's done a lot of work in safety and protective service and health outcomes for older adults and people with disabilities. And she's been a very strong support to the commission as well, and we're really happy to have her as a leader in our state. So where are you there?
Trying to be quick.
You're being very
Keep
quick.
us on time.
Oops,
Oh,
there
sorry,
you go.
Judy. Good morning, everyone. All right, come on, Oregon. Let's have some energy here for our federal partners who want to hear from us. This is an amazing opportunity for us here in Oregon. Thank you for that and for bringing the conference here to Lebanon, of all places. Thank you for driving through the farmlands to be here. I'm sure many of you were wondering, as was I, if we were headed in the right direction as we came to this beautiful site, but I'm glad you all made it. It's amazing to think that a conference in Lebanon can sell out in a matter of days, hours, weeks, and that we have a full house, and I'm excited about the energy and insight and intellect that's in the room today, so thank you for being here. In Oregon, we can't help but take pride in all that we've accomplished on behalf of older adults that happen to reside here who decide to come here because of how fantastic a place it is to live. We should be really proud. We had some pioneering efforts that came before, decades before us, who set the bar really high in terms of a vision for our state around what it should look like to age, both in terms of health and healthy environments and places that we want to be able to live, and also in terms of a long-term care system that supports people to live at home and in community, and with choice and with dignity and with independence. And those are values and a vision that we hold very true and fast in our hearts, and we should. When I go around and I meet with the different staff who do the work on behalf of our agency and on behalf of all of you, I always ask them, so what's going well and what's keeping you up at night? So I thought I would talk about a few things that are relevant to today's discussion that I think are going well here in Oregon, and a couple of things that keep us up at night that we're looking forward to you all having some conversation about today. So what's going well here in Oregon? In terms of the seniors in the state who are low income, it's extraordinary that 87% of them get to remain at home or living in community settings. We can boast of that fact here in Oregon, and we should, because those values that I talked about have really driven a system that supports individual plans for people that allow them to be able to live with dignity, choice, and independence in whatever way is best for them at the right place at the right time. We've accomplished much in that regard, and it's been a lot of hard work, and a lot of you in this room were part of that, and I appreciate it. We also feel good about our third in the nation ranking around several things. I'm going to read them because I won't get them all right unless I do, but affordability, access, choice of setting and provider, support for family caregivers, and effective transitions. That's quite a list, and we're proud to be third in the country. We'd love to be first, though, right? So let's talk about a couple things that keep us up at night that we need to keep working on together. And I will say, others today are here to impart their wisdom upon us. One of the jokes is some of the first people who speak know the least, so I'll just throw that out there for you, but here you go. So one of the things that keeps me up is that women and people of color tend to have the least saved for retirement. And even beyond that, 48% of all Oregonians will rely only on Social Security for their retirement savings. That will afford them to live with about $12,000 a year of income. Oregon ranks in the top 5 states in the country for hunger and food insecurity among older adults. 1 in 3 Oregonians age 65 plus fall every year, with 20 to 30% of those falls resulting in bruises, hip fractures, and traumatic brain injury, which ultimately compromises the ability to live independently. Health disparities among people of color in this state remain stubbornly high, and access to care in rural and frontier Oregon is exceedingly difficult, especially for specialty care like gerontology and mental health. We screened over 35,000 abuse and neglect reports in 2013, And we saw nearly a 40% increase in substantiated abuse involving older adults that live at home or in community settings. Oregon seniors and people with disabilities are estimated to have lost over $11.5 million in savings and equity in 2013 as a result of financial exploitation. We clearly have work to do. That's why you're all here. Just 2 years ago, my grandfather, at the age of 92, passed away in an assisted living facility here in Oregon. He was an amazing individual who greatly influenced my life. He survived abuse as a child, the Great Depression, a mental health challenge that threatened his career as an educator, but he taught me many, many things, many important things, like how to waltz and to polka, how to drive a tractor, how to bake, how to garden. But some of the most important things he taught me were these, and I think you're going to apply them today to the work. People can do anything if they put their minds to it. In my case, around the time of potty training, that looks like this with my grandfather. Papa, I need to go potty. Mind you, I'm not potty trained yet. Well, then why don't you just go? You know where the toilet is. Okay, so I did. My mom says I was potty trained after that. So people can do anything if you put your mind to it. We are put here on this earth not for the good of ourselves, but for the good of others. Hard work pays off. So as you put your minds to some of the most pressing challenges here today of our time, you will be asked to set aside what might be in your own personal best interest for the good of our nation, for the good of all Oregonians. And it's abundantly clear that the hard work that you do will make a difference in the lives of many, many people following the outcome of today and the recommendations, setting the course for the next decades of change and innovation and pioneering spirit that we need to have around some of the challenges we're facing now.
We're moving into a time where we're going to hear from panels, and our panels are going to consist of a few experts in their fields, and they're going to share with us a little bit about what they know about the topic area, and then we're going to have an opportunity for all of you to ask questions, and there will be volunteers coming around to give you that opportunity after the panelists speak. So for our first panel, I'm going to introduce Brent Hunsberger. He is going to moderate the retirement security panel. Brent has written the Oregonian's It's Only Money column since 2008, and he grew up in New Mexico, graduated from Indiana University, has written for newspapers since 1986, and he is a certified financial planner. So I will turn things over to Brent now. Thank you very much.
Well, after hearing from our keynote speaker, I'd just like to say it's great to see so many beautiful, aging, imperfect people out here. So since 2008, I've had the delight of writing the Oregonian's personal finance column. But like many journalists, I have tended to become cynical and jaded around some topics regarding personal finance, and one of them actually at times has been this concept of the retirement crisis. Maybe it's because I'm addicted to youth, I'm not sure, but at times I've heard it so much that I've started to blow it off. But then I asked to moderate an event like this, and I start looking at the statistics, and I get worried all over again, adding to my gray hair. Americans aren't ready for a secure retirement, and we can't blame the financial crisis anymore. Just recently in the Journal of Pension Research, a paper was published titled, "Are U.S. Workers Ready for Retirement?" And it's these researchers at the New School for Social Research summarized some statistics out there, and it found that basically only 44% of U.S. workers participate in a retirement plan at work. That's U.S. workers. That's not including those who are unemployed. One of the reasons for this is that since 1999 and 2011, the availability of employer-sponsored retirement plans dropped from 61% to 53%. That's going in the wrong direction. I know our Aaron, speaker earlier, said that the percentage of people, of Oregonians who will only have Social Security income to rely on was in the 40s, but this study found that nationwide it's more like 55%. And the average net worth of somebody nearing retirement, somebody who's between the age of 55 and 64, is only about, for a single, $183,000. Now that includes home equity, and that's the average. That figure is brought up by people with a lot of wealth. If you look at the median, the midpoint between all the people, it's more like $60,700. That's enough to generate an immediate annuity for the rest of their life, providing $3,800 a month. Now, California and Illinois have both enacted state-sponsored retirement plans. In Washington, Governor Jay Inslee, I believe this week, signed a bill creating the Small Business Retirement Marketplace, which will provide employers and employees of small businesses access to hopefully more affordable retirement plans, kind of in the same way that health care marketplace has provided us access to health insurance. However, this is a voluntary program. In Oregon, House Bill 2960 will potentially create a broader state-sponsored retirement investment program, but right now it's stuck in committee. So what can we do to make retirement more secure? Well, we have 4 panelists who can speak to that, hopefully, today. They'll talk about everything from the big picture and demographic and legal trends to people working in the trenches. Our first panelist is Dave Topagna. He's president of Eco Northwest, a consulting firm in Portland. And he oversees the firm's business strategy and operations. He's built his practice in education, healthcare, human service, and tax policy. He's also overseen the development of award-winning software tools in 8 states, including Oregon, that helps low-income families, seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans understand their eligibility for safety net programs. Before he joined Eagle Northwest, John was an analyst at the U.S. Congressional Budget Office, where he forecasted the nation's welfare spending and estimated the cost of key congressional legislation. John?
Thank you. So I'm going to, let's see here, is this on? Yeah. Okay, excellent. So I'm going to be quick, and I'm going to split my remarks in half. Half on what I'm supposed to talk about and half on what I would like to talk about. The first half is on the retirement security. As Brent said, I was an analyst for the Congressional Budget Office, and I will tell you that all the grim projections that people have been talking about are true, and I can add detail to that. I guess the first, and then the second half is what I'd like to speak to is thinking about a proposal for a 4th panel, maybe not at this conference, but at some other conference, on economic development, because as Judy and Nora and Bill said, there is a big asset side to this conversation that we don't talk a lot about and need to talk about more in the future. So first on the retirement security. Okay. A little more on the numbers. First of all, the baby boom is not a short-term phenomenon. Lots of people think, okay, we had the baby boom, they will age in and age out, but this is a permanent shift in the demography of the United States. In 1960, 10% of the population was 65 plus. In 1980, it was still 10% of the population was 65 plus. By 2020, it'll be 16. By 2040, it will be 20%, and it will stay that way for the rest of the century. So it's an upshift in terms of the share of the population over age 65 that is a permanent shift, not a temporary one. That means that this is a permanent issue that we need to be thinking about in terms of security as folks age. With respect to with several comments on the nature of retirement benefits, just to give some specificity to this. For those who were participating in private retirement programs in 1980, 60% of those participating in private retirement programs were in defined benefit programs, programs that had a formula and had some kind of permanent feature to them upon retirement. By 2010, that was 60% in 1980, 7% in 2010. By contrast, defined contributions in 1980, 17%, up to 69% in 2010, which essentially means the risk of the retirement package has shifted from the corporation to the individual, and the individual then has to weather the volatile stock market, et cetera. What has happened is the population has responded to this. Folks understand they are not financially secure. They understand they have not saved enough. And so what was a century-long decline in retirement age stopped and now is starting to increase again. So go back to 1910. For those who were fortunate to live long enough in 1910, the average retirement age of men in 1910 was 73 years old. Over the course of the century, that trended down until 1993 to 62 years old. So it came down 11 years over the course of the century and now has ticked back up to 65 for men in 2013. So this will be, the boomers will enter a new era of mixing work with retirement. And my colleague Kevin Cahill, who works both at ECHO and with Boston College, sees sort of three different phases of working. First, a phased retirement, a phase out of sort of your career job, a transition to a new bridge job that will take a period of time, and then potentially a third phase as people start to understand their financial position of a reentry. They go from a career job to a bridge job, perhaps a spell, and then a need to come back and reentry. So workforce development we're talking about here is increasingly going to be important. Now I'm going to transition to this topic of economic development because we do talk an awful lot about this population in sort of negative and deficit terms, and I do want to say that Oregon is an attractive place to the 55 plus. We are almost attractive in terms of net migration as we are for the Portlandia set, the young and the restless. And I'm going to make some very quick points here. First of all, this is, as Dr. Thomas said, the best educated senior population in the history of time. 10 to 15 percentage points higher BA attainment than retirees back in 1990. It is an entrepreneurial crowd that has an awful lot of time and some with resources to volunteer, but certainly an awful lot of time to give, and certainly needs out there. And in this state, retirees that are coming in are bringing federal transfers with them. Most recent numbers that I've seen is over $5 billion in Medicare spending associated with retirees in Oregon. If I look at Douglas County, Oregon, and this is important for rural Oregon, if I take Social Security transfers and Medicare transfers for the population living in Douglas County down by Roseburg, and I compare it to wage and salary income for the county, it's equal to half of the total wage and salary income in the county. So thinking about how to harness that, not only the entrepreneurial skills, the talents that are coming in, but also thinking about how to build a health infrastructure that captures some of that spending, I think is very important for urban and rural Oregon over the course of the next 20 years.
Well, $5 billion in Medicare spending, we can see why this facility got built. Yeah. So John spoke about the reentry phase for retirees. I think our next panelist, Carole Wildermuth, can speak to that directly. Carole is the Employment and Training Coordinator for Experience Works in Central Oregon. She has a caseload of 50 low-income seniors who are trying to re-enter the workforce. She's had an interesting career path where she actually dropped out of the workforce for a while to care for her mother, and tried to re-enter it at the time of a economic crisis. So she got into Experience Works program and eventually into her current position. She has a huge passion for helping seniors and the ever-challenging needs of this rapidly growing population. Carole? Move that mic up there.
I'm kind of new at this stuff, so bear with me. Thank you. Can you hear me okay? No, not yet? Okay. Is that better?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's good.
okay. Experience Works, we're celebrating our 50th year. We're in 30 states plus Puerto Rico. We serve over 15,000 people that are trying to gain employment per year. The need is just growing exponentially. We have, in our state, there's 6 of us as employment and training coordinators, a state manager and an office coordinator, and we cover most of the whole state except for 2 counties. And Oregon, as you know, is such a desirable place to live, but one of the major hurdles right now that a lot of seniors are facing is affordable housing. That's just major. And I live in Bend. I moved over there for this job, and I moved 9 times the first 9 months because I could not find housing that I could afford and bring all of my things from Portland. So 3/4 of my life is still in Portland. But enough of that. The age group that I'm serving right now for my territory is running from 56 years old to I have someone that's soon going to be 76, and he's also deaf. And I get all this wonderful feedback from the supervisors, which I'll explain in a minute. These people have so much to give and want to work, but they are so filled with fear and worried about age discrimination, so we have to work at helping with that. Our program is a really neat setup. It's kind of a win-win because we work in partnership with host agencies that are governmental agencies and other nonprofits that are 501c3s as a placement for them to get on-the-job training. And that piece is so important because a lot of people that come into the program have been unemployed for quite a while. They don't have a current reference, and this is an opportunity for them to gain a current reference, which you know is worth its weight in gold. Let's see here. I serve 6 counties, Lynn and Benton, and then Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson, and Wheeler. Half of my participants are in the Lynn-Benton territory. The majority of them for Lynn-Benton are Lynn County. They're still really struggling over here for gaining employment. We haven't had a lot of movement into employment from my group over here. So a lot of work is involved in getting people prepared, building their skills, and that's what we do. We help them work through some of their fears, especially the age discrimination. I don't even like to have them bring that phrase up. I'd rather they focus on building their skills and get past it, because age discrimination, it can be in a lot of different age categories, not just for seniors. So try to get them to let that go. A lot of seniors that I work with, they have plowed through all of their retirement. They have had to sell their home. They have nothing. They're starting over. You know, as myself at 59, I started over with almost nothing. I had a little bit of retirement that I still have. I haven't touched, but it's very daunting, very terrifying. They're living month to month, and sometimes not making it each month. They often have to go to food banks and, you know, get assistance from other resources for transportation. That's huge too. If we work really hard at building their skills, we have a Job Ready program, and the training tools, and we partner with other agencies for their resources to help build these skills. We work in partnership with the Oregon Employment Department. We're housed through the WorkSource offices, which is really helpful. And again, we're always constantly having to refer to other agencies for assistance on other things. Dental is a really big problem. I think if there was some help with dental, a lot of my participants would be more employable, because the first thing a person sees is your face. And if they have major dental problems, that's a huge one. So I'd like to, bring that to the table. That's a big one for us. And transportation, housing. Those are the three biggies that we're constantly struggling with. So we work at building up their self-esteem, getting them more prepared to be job ready and how to apply for jobs, because as you know, it's very different now from the good old days when you just went to an office and introduced yourself and gave them a resume. It's just, they're having to learn how to use the computer, and it's very exciting. Our mission is we strive very hard for success with these people, and that is, as you know, working for nonprofit, you're underpaid and overworked, and what keeps you going is the successes that we can have happen, and they are beyond words. And I was a participant in the program, and it changed my life. My mentor is here. She's just a fabulous woman that's been in this kind of work for many, many years, and I thank her profusely for believing in me.
Would you stand up, whoever your mentor is?
Marietta.
hi.
She gave me the courage to go into the more social service-oriented work. I have to stop. Sorry. Okay.
Well, thank you, Carole. Let me just ask you real quick, Carole, before we move on. How do you help your clients overcome the fear of age discrimination?
Well, first of all, I kind of play tough mom. I just say, it's there, get over it. Let's focus on building your skills and just really trying to change their focus. That's the big part. And once they start working on the training plan, and they just sort of forget about the fact that they're building their skills and they're testing out, and they're seeing progress being made, and that really makes a big difference.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, I'll take some questions in a little while, but first I want to introduce our other panelists. Victoria Blachly is a partner at Samuel Yolen Cantor. Her practice is focused on estate planning, as well as this is like trust and estate litigation, as well as she's worked on financial elder abuse cases. She's been writing for and lecturing at the national and state legal seminars. about trusts and estates since 2001, and she's a frequent blogger for wealthlawblog.com. She's also a commissioner to the Governor's Commission on Senior Services. Victoria?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. There's just so much information. My brain is already full, and we are just starting the day. So I'm so excited to see how we're going to take all this information and synthesize it in our breakout sessions and come away with some brilliant ideas. And we're going to solve all these problems that are being raised. Because I'm an optimist. Well, no, I'm a lawyer. I'm very cynical. So when I think about security as a lawyer, I go to legal documents. What kind of legal documents can you have in place that provide financial security, security for your wishes, for what you want to happen with your medical care, security for what you want to happen with your estate during your life and after you pass? So I'm just going to touch briefly on these 4 issues: power of attorney, advanced healthcare directive, your estate plan, and a veil. Now you're sitting here going, a veil? I haven't heard of that. What is that? I'm not going to tell you yet. You have to wait till the end. That's how I make sure you all pay attention. So power of attorney is a very important document, and I think absolutely every person should have this document, because what I do as a fiduciary litigator is I only deal with the dysfunctional families. I deal with the predators that come in and take advantage of people. A power of attorney document, when you have a trusted, capable fiduciary who's going to make decisions for you if you are incapacitated or incapable, is worth its weight so many times over. Because if you don't have this document, and God forbid something happens to you without planning, then the courts have to get involved. Then your very private information becomes very public information. Then the court gets to decide who's going to make these decisions for you, and it takes away your choices. So all of you should have a power of attorney. And you should also be aware that there has been some discussion for legislative changes for how Oregon handles its powers of attorney. And I believe it's tabled for right now, but it's been a very interesting discussion, because part of it has been, do we make power of attorneys more difficult to get so that we have more people involved, so you have more eyes on the situation for vulnerable adults? So there was one proposal where you would have to have 2 separate witnesses to see the person execute their POA, and you would have to have a notary. So you'd have to have 3 people every time you wanted to execute a POA, which is laudable in that you would have more eyes on the situation. But it's also problematic when you deal with rural Oregonians. Are these people going to be able to have that same kind of access? So it's an access to justice issue. So that conversation is continuing. Your advanced healthcare directive is very important to avoid uncertainty. What do you want to happen to you when you are in the hospital? Legislatively speaking, too, there have been some discussions for changes to Oregon's advanced healthcare directive. And that's going to be interesting to see. That's been tabled. It's in a work group now for 2016. That's going to be interesting to see how that develops, because is it going to mean that if you have a current advanced healthcare directive, do you have to have a new one? There's discussion about applying the 5 Wishes program, and that's a form that's used in 42 other states. And I think it's a really interesting conversation, too, to think about. As our society is much more mobile, should we have a form that is recognized in each state, so you don't have to execute a new one if you travel to a new state? So that's an interesting conversation, and how that law is going to progress as well. Your will and your estate plan. If you're thinking, I don't want to deal with it because I don't want to deal with my dysfunctional family and I don't want to deal with my mortality, join the group. Nobody does. But you have to do it. And what is really effective with an estate plan that some people don't consider is that while you have capacity and while you can decide what you want to happen, if you put your money into an irrevocable trust with a capable, competent trustee, and then later you lose capacity, those vultures who are trying to get access to your money don't have access to your money because it's all in the trust. So that can be a really effective form of planning. The virtual asset instruction letter is a new concept in that there's so much pressure for information to go online. All your investment account statements, your bank account statements, everything is digital. And then it's password protected. Who's going to have access to that if you are suddenly incapacitated? Who knows where all those accounts are? Who knows that you want all of your online photos of your cutest dog in the world to be copied and given to all of your grandchildren if they don't have that information? So a veil is a document. It's not a legal document in that you file it with a court or anything, but you list out what your accounts are, what your passwords are, and what you want done with them. Maybe you want some accounts deleted. Maybe you don't want people to know about your secret online life. That's valid planning too for security. Now, the problem with this legally is that there are efforts underway to legalize that fiduciaries, power of attorney, trustee, personal representative, or a conservator, is legally authorized to then use that password and go online and get access. Because the way the law currently stands is there's a federal law, the Stored Communications Act from 1986, which on digital years is like 30,000 years ago. And that act deals with criminal warrants. So online providers are saying we are not going to give access to fiduciaries or to anyone because that act doesn't provide for it. It doesn't say anything about fiduciaries. Fiduciaries step into the shoes of the decedent to carry out their intent. But the online providers are fighting that. And as the law currently stands, if you do have that password and you use it for someone else, then that is a cybercrime because you have violated, most likely, the terms of service agreement for the online provider, and you're making a fraudulent representation to the end user that you're the decedent. So there's legislation going forward now, Senate Bill 369, that is trying to fix that problem as well. And I'm used up all my time, so, the one thing I do want to leave you with, so everybody get out your pen because you have to write this down. The Elder Abuse Hotline. Write this down, put it in your smartphone under Elder Abuse Hotline. We are all important people in the part of keeping elders secure. It is 1-855-503-SAFE 7233. Put that in your phone. If you have any kind of inkling that somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing to an elder, call that line. Let everybody you know about that number. We need to spread that so that we can increase security. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. We could have a whole hour-long session just on those topics. Steve Weiss, our last panelist, another person in the trenches, has been involved in social justice work in Oregon for the last 20 years as a volunteer advocate. He's also board president of the Oregon State Council for Retired Citizens, the Independent Living Resources, the Community Alliance of Tenants, and the Oregon Consumer League. That's a lot of boards. He's board vice president of the United Seniors of Oregon and a board member of Oregon Alliance for Retired Americans. Steve?
Good morning. I'm going to talk about economic security, and I'm going to talk specifically about two crucial programs for low-income elders, or for elders in general, really both. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, and Social Security Retirement, also known as Old Age Insurance. I'm going to split this up into three sections: problems, solutions, and reality. The 2015 federal poverty level for a single-person household is $981 a month. For a two-person household, it's $1,328 a month. The Supplemental Security Income monthly stipend is $733 a month for those living independently in the community. That is 74% of the federal poverty level. As of December 2013, there were 8,363,477 people on SSI, and 2,107,524 of them were over age 65. I am one of those people. There are 83,264 people on SSI here in Oregon, of which 16,730 are over age 65. The Census Bureau calculates that 9.5% of people 65 and older, 4.2 million, were living in poverty. However, the supplemental poverty rate, which I believe to be more accurate, is 14.6%, equating to 6.5 million people in this country. The supplemental poverty rate for elders in Oregon is estimated at 11%. In December 2014, the average benefit for Social Security retirement beneficiaries was only about $1,300 a month. That's barely 30% over the federal poverty level and well below the minimum necessary to enable a secure but no-frills retirement. For two-thirds of elderly beneficiaries, Social Security provides at least half of total income. And for more than one-third of them, Social Security constitutes at least 90% of income. Those percentages are even higher among minorities. Solutions. At the May 2005 White House Conference on Aging, the Leadership Council of Aging Organizations presented a resolution on SSI. The resolution's recommendations included increasing the federal benefit standard to at least 120% of the federal poverty level and increasing the assets/resources limits and index increases in inflation. The resolution was torpedoed by the George W. Bush administration, which controlled that conference with an iron fist. In March of this year, Nancy Altman and Eric Kingson of Social Security Works recommended expanding Social Security, fighting to protect current employer-provided defined benefit plans, and figuring out the best ways to establish new ones. The Supplemental Security Income Restoration Act of 2015 is expected to be introduced in both houses of Congress this month by Senators Sherrod Brown and Elizabeth Warren and Representative Raul Grijalva. Among other things, it would increase the SSI resources limit from $2,000 for individuals to $10,000 and update the general income disregard from $20 to $112 per month. Unfortunately, the bills do not address raising the federal monthly benefit rate. And finally, the reality. I won't mince words here. The United States Congress is now controlled by the dark side. I'll leave it to you to decide whom to crown with the dubious designation of being Lord Voldemort. None of the solutions I presented here are likely to be enacted in the next 2 years. The only obstacle preventing the Republicans from decimating the federal social safety net is a presidential veto. In my opinion, we must urge President Obama to use his veto power liberally for the remainder of his term. And we must hope that the Republicans will be unable to override those vetoes. I am looking toward the next 2 years with trepidation. I'm 72 years old. I have never seen a crisis in this country, domestically at least, as the one we have now. We face a clear and present danger for every low-income person in America. And I really don't know what's going to happen. I just wanted to let you know what my take on this is. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you, Steve. Well, that was a moderator's dream, a nice politically charged speech that I'd love to get to have a debate about with everybody, but I've been told that we need to stay on time. I apologize for speaking too long to start. You're going to have to hold your questions and either buttonhole the panelists during the conference, or we've got a breakout at 1:45 on retirement security, and perhaps they'll all be around then. But thank you for listening, and let's thank our panelists for speaking.
Thanks, Brent. The plan is that each of you is going to take 3.50 minutes to briefly describe the group's issues and recommendations. So I don't care what order we go in. So anybody ready to start? We have elder justice, healthy aging, long-term services and supports, and retirement security, but that one does need to be last. Are you ready, Fred?
Yeah, I'll jump right there.
Okay.
So I am only ready because my group was awesome that I got to work with. So great conversations in our subgroups and where we were at with recommendations. We started off looking at the 2014 Elder Justice Coordinating Council recommendations that came out at the federal level. And somebody brought that to the table. Ellen Clem, not surprisingly, brought that to the table as a starting point for our conversation, just to kind of help us think through what the feds are looking at with the subgroup conversations, and then our ensuing 45-minute full group conversation. I think really what, 3 of the 4 recommendations are things that need to and can be focused. And this is definitely our Oregon recommendation to the feds in the national level, the White House, of what can be accomplished or needs to be accomplished. I mean, all 4 of them are for the national level. And then 3 of the 4 are things that can be looked at internally in states, either whether it's through legislative action, Governor's Commission on Senior Services, or different county and state approaches. So the first one, and this one very specific at the national level, is the need for more national coordination on elder justice issues and elder abuse. There has been recently, just in October, a renaming of an office at the Administration for Community Living. They renamed the Elder Rights Office, the Elder Justice and Adult Protective Services Office. But as Marie Cervantes confirmed for me, or at least as far as she's aware, there's been no communication from that office as far as what national coordination is going to look like. But I think in the national level, I mean, and I'm even aware, I work with that office. It was a first step to rename it, to have a central location for issues of elder justice and adult protective services. But I'm aware that at least for the last year or so, they don't have a director of that office. They're in the process of hiring one now. From even what it was named previously. So there's just a lot of work to be done at the national level. And for our purposes, and I need to go back and look at my notes for our full recommendation, but it's the need for the data coordination and collection, the awareness. Just a lot of the research that needs to be done. There needs to be a lot more national coordination. So I'm going to put a lot more meat onto that for the products coming out of today. Secondly, a public awareness campaign, and this is definitely one that can and should be done at the national level and can be done at the state level. And we need to spend a lot more time looking at all abuse types was emphasized in our work group. There was some emphasis in some of the smaller groups on financial exploitation in particular, and because of the costs of financial exploitation, more awareness, more education. But the larger group that we had wanted to make sure that we were emphasizing all abuse types, sexual, physical, emotional, psychological abuse as well. An emphasis we can start moving towards, or we should start moving towards some kind of a marketing campaign. And then as a component of that, enhanced supports for victims, and ideally before people become victims, more supports, more resources, infrastructure. So there's a lot of work to be done around there, and again, a lot more even meat than that on that public awareness recommendation. Third is around law enforcement supports. Actually, I'm realizing there actually was 5. So law enforcement supports reconsiderations. We had some conversation, again, not only at the local level, what better tools can we be providing to our law enforcement to get involved in elder abuse situations that are even arguably, and in some instances, out of the hands of what adult protective services can do. We need more considerations, but definitely at the federal level as well, with the FBI, their Department of Justice at the federal level. So that would be a third recommendation. Fourth recommendation is around fiduciary reforms, fiduciary education, so guardianship, conservatorship, powers of attorney, rep payee. We had some conversations specifically around that. Definitely a recommendation at the federal level with Social Security Administration. And I am aware of some activity in that department with Social Security Administration in a subgroup that I've had the privilege of being a part of in the last 6-8 months. But there's much further to go there. A fifth recommendation specifically around, and this wasn't an initial recommendation out of the subgroups, but in the ensuing conversation of our full group really took form. But more, what I'm kind of framing is community approach supports. Around more not just multidisciplinary teams that do exist at the county levels, but more, this interdisciplinary approach to prevention issues. I would categorize our conversations and there was some conversation around, bringing in community health approaches and entities to have some conversations about how we can better really do the proactive prevention of elder abuse. So I will stop there. I'm probably over my time already. Thank you.
All right. Well, not that it's a competition, but the Healthy Aging people rocked too, and came up with 3 excellent issues. And what they did really well was bundle. We were a bundling group. So I think everyone sees themselves reflected in these. So if we were to look at age-friendly communities, which is also building a community for all ages, it was really clear that this is intergenerational and multi-sectoral approach, but using that age-friendly foundation and infrastructure. Looking to meet the needs of Oregon's diverse communities, really recognizing that a county is a county and no county is alike, that uniqueness that comes to Oregon. And then thinking about what we would need as higher leadership support and leadership support in general as this movement builds from cities, counties, up to the state, but really having the governor endorse this and see this as a vision and a goal. It's aspirational and inspirational, but we know how to do it and we can do it. There's an infrastructure to follow. So getting that commitment from the governor, potentially having a commission, an age-friendly communities commission or communities for all ages commission, having a policy advisor who focuses on to the governor for healthy aging and age-friendly communities. Really looking for that outreach and that communication strategy. So how do we increase awareness and really have people thinking about the importance and what it means to age well in this state and starting that early on. And having a very strong commitment to empowerment. It was really important that communities have the ability to mobilize and empower themselves to identify their priorities, but even more so really honoring the independent living and the importance of people to be able to engage in their own health and make their own decisions and be part of that instead of being told what to do. So that commitment to that authentic communication and to build trust to make that happen. Recognizing that there's a lack of trust out there maybe in some of the service agencies that are providers and those who are the end users. The second issue is looking to an integrated and comprehensive services that are reimbursed by Medicaid and Medicare. So that kind of captures both the problem and the goal and the solution. But really recognizing that mental health, dental health, physical health, and a long list that we came up with, that we get out of our silos and that we come around true patient-centeredness, which would really mean having multiple care providers in contact and working with each other to help successful optimal health happen for our patients and our community members. So moving out of our siloed sectors, looking at interdisciplinary care and learning. So what does that look like from a medical education perspective? How do we train that earlier on? Again, more community awareness. I think that has really come out loud and clear, and I just heard it in the prior session, is that there needs to be a lot more talking and a lot more broad communication strategies to get conversations happening in people's homes. And then more research and understanding what the data can do, collecting more data and doing more research around how we age and causes of disability. And the last issue, while it kind of is part of those other two issues, but was really important that the group didn't want to lose sight of, is just mental health in general for all of us as we age, and how that doesn't get lost, that it's really called out and such a key piece of what we need to do so that it is integrated into our care and that it's not seen as a negative, that people aren't afraid to talk about it. And this was also really important for caregivers and caregiver health and what that means to take care of those who are taking care of us. So that's the high-level summary. Thank you.
Well, our group on long-term care was a group that rocks too. Unfortunately, they had a rock for a facilitator. And I cannot find where our sheets were, which I was going to go to. But there were several things that really did come out. And first was every group picked transportation as one of their issues. And the thing that really came out on transportation was that it isn't simply medical and getting people to a particular service. It's about the social aspect. And the way I like to put it is, we haven't moved that far if we've moved from warehousing seniors to putting them in storage units where they're not connected with the community. And people want to be connected. So we need to do that. And that transportation itself was a socialization aspect for people, as well as a mental health deal in terms of just getting out of their place, and we needed to take it. And of course, funding is you just can't get around it. It's a key issue around transportation. But there also is a need for better coordination of all of the transportation assets within a community. That we need to look at how we have a central hub where you can find information and where the different resources can be used across programs and across ages where possible. And then finally, that there needs to be safety taken into account in terms of it, and talking about public transportation where seniors often don't feel safe within that, but also just training those drivers and stuff to be sensitive to the needs of the individuals that they're working. The other were two around culture. One was culture change, which was spoken up this morning, and that is that we change the concept that aging is an asset, not a problem within our culture, and looking at that. And some of the sort of solutions were things such as age-friendly communities. In other words, don't talk about simply making it accessible for seniors, making it a community that's accessible for people at all ages. We don't need that dichotomy, because things that work for seniors also work for young parents with kids and a stroller or a bicycle or something, that the similar types of concerns are there. And then talking about intergenerational coordination around assets. In other words, building programs where we use the assets of the seniors, which may be wisdom, may be the caring, the knowledge they have, around that of younger people, which may be the physical ability to do things. And looking at how we build that. The one caution was, not all older people want to be around younger people. So recognizing the fact that, this is individual. The other cultural was the whole idea of making our services culturally responsible. And we were lucky enough in our group to have some participants from the deaf culture. And often that is a culture that is ignored when we are looking at serving people. And so they brought some good points about that, that we need to look at each. And once again, it gets around being person-centered. Each individual is different. But service providers need to be aware of the culture of that person and how that might affect the situation. So there needs to be training around this awareness of cultures and how to deal with. The other thing that came out was still, it's just like transportation. It's been an issue from the beginning. We discussed it the first White House conference that I was at. We're discussing it again. And that is better information on services. That there's still, even with our ADRCs and stuff, our problem. Some of the individuals went to it around deaf services. Most of the deaf services they found on our ADRC or on the website were in New York, not in Oregon. And yet they were aware from their information referral of a lot of services that were available. So we need to go across our various databases and see how we get to them. And then we need to ask, especially our various subpopulations, let's look at the service, our information and referral. Is it working for you? What isn't working? Are you aware of other services and stuff? And let's see, person-centered was the other big thing. And that really crossed a lot of barriers and actually came around in each of our other discussions. The fact that we need to, one, take into account the cultures of the different individuals. Two, that we need to be training our caregivers, but not just the caregivers, people throughout our spectrum about the various cultures, so that they're even aware that there are issues. And one, I think, interesting one was the whole issue about caregivers and caregivers following the person from setting to setting. Because one of the big issues for individuals, and I think that's especially the case for people who feel very vulnerable, is the trust building. And so having somebody who you've learned to trust go with you to the next setting to help, maybe not do all the care there, but help you in that setting, is a real key issue to people. So those were the main ones, and we had a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas, I think, and it's going to be a real experience, I think, for state staff to look at those, because I think there were some very specific types of things that will be helpful.
Thanks, Don.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Okay, so first I'm going to report out on our retirement security breakout, and then I have some closing remarks on behalf of the department. So I'll start with our breakout, which I think was also just an amazing group of people. We came up with quite a few recommendations, and I'm going to try to go really, really fast so that I can tell you what all of them were, because I don't want to leave them out. So the issues that came up most prominently were around Social Security, the adequacy of benefits currently, and then how to expand and protect SSI, and also the retirement and disability programs within Social Security. And then also related is the fiscal health overall of all of those programs. The second issue was the lack of financial education in general, cost of living in general, the issues around family caregiving, and the overall lack of savings and the fact that we need to rebuild the three-legged stool. So our recommendations within Social Security, there were a number of recommendations. So to address the fiscal health of the programs, or at least part of the program, we talked about removing the earnings cap, so on the payroll tax. So you would get rid of that, which would increase the longevity of the program and the sustainability of the trust fund. And then we would increase all benefits, SSI and the retirement and disability side, to at least, and this was the very minimum, was 120% of federal poverty. And then also we had consensus, I'll just say, around all of these recommendations. There were a couple that we didn't reach total consensus on, but these were the consensus of the group. We would use the Consumer Price Index for the elderly to calculate the cost of living adjustment, or the COLA, so that it was a truer reflection of the expenditures for older adults. So their cost of living increase would reflect their expenditures. The second recommendation is around positive media attention about retirement security in general. And that can be done through all different forms of media, but we really thought that that would be something that needs to happen right away. Also, fiscal education and awareness and continuing education, starting in schools and then moving beyond. So throughout the lifespan, we would continue the conversation and the education. And a couple different ways of doing that were recommended. One would be to have an evidence-based pilot that would, be a pilot around education. And it would be a long pilot, because you'd want to measure over a long period of time whether you were successful or not at educating people about retirement security. And then also, it was raised that an intergenerational approach is effective. One of the stories in our group was about how when individuals are younger, maybe they don't understand why some of their earnings essentially are put into a plan that they would use later, and they wanted that in their paycheck immediately. And the older people in the workforce were able to say, no, trust me, you're gonna need that. And so having that sort of intergenerational connection about what you need when you're older would be important in educating our youth about retirement security. Then we should address wage inequality. Or eliminate, we came up with a more strong word at the end there that we had consensus around. So eliminate wage inequality. And some of the sub-issues are around gender disparities for people of color. We would address age discrimination or elder discrimination, and then make sure there's increased employment opportunities for older adults. Support the opt-out retirement plan discussed today by Ted Wheeler. Rebuild defined benefit plans and strengthen both defined benefit and defined contribution plans. A couple of ways to do that are to take away incentives that encourage conversion of a defined benefit plan to a defined contribution plan. Make plans a little more portable, like they've done in Canada. Encourage really long-term savings, and look at penalties within defined contribution plans to see if they really deter people from cashing out. Because I think in our group there was some indication that, or evidence around the fact that some of those penalties, like the 10% penalty, really doesn't disincentivize people from cashing out, and make sure people understand the value of staying in tax-advantaged plans. Then we would create more innovative ways to save. So thinking about things like an app that would go on your phone and automatically a certain amount of change you might have go straight into a retirement savings plan, as long as there were the appropriate protections in place around the new technology. Address housing. So we endorsed the statement, we had consensus around the statement, housing as a human right in our group. And then also national action around increased revenue, where all entities pay their fair share. And we would look at a new way of budgeting so that we're capturing future savings related to current expenditures and investments. So those were our 10 consensus recommendations. Thank you. Thanks for everyone who participated. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes. I want to thank all of you on behalf of the Department of Human Services Aging and People with Disabilities program. Our director, Mike McCormick, really wanted to be here to thank you at the end of the day, but because it's legislative session, he did get pulled back to Salem for some legislative responsibilities, but he was here all morning, got to hear all the great panel presentations and our keynote presentations. He really sends his best, and he was really happy to see such a packed room here today. Both Mike and myself, we really look forward to the recommendations from all of these breakout sessions, the panels, the speakers. We want to work with you in an ongoing fashion and other stakeholders, the legislature, anyone who wants to get involved so that we continue to be able to have the right types of programs and policies for older adults and people with disabilities in Oregon. And I also want to say thank you so much to Judy Strand and the Governor's Commission, the entire Governor's Commission on Senior Services. So if some of you, I think some of you are still in the room, if you could stand up, I'd like to recognize all of your support. Thank you. So we wouldn't have been able to have an Oregon version of the White House Conference on Aging without the wonderful Governor's Commission. So thank you so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank all of our extremely dedicated staff at Aging and People with Disabilities at the state. In particular, Ann McQueen has been our tireless conference planner and advocate. And then she's had all of these other staff and volunteers around to help today. And so if you could all stand up, just want to recognize you and thank you. I think that's all I have. So thanks so much for being here. And I'm going to turn it back to Judy.
Thanks, Ashley. Okay, such a great job. I'm so proud of all of you. And what we're going to do is to work with the facilitators. Staff are going to pull things together and have a tight report that will go to DC. And I'd like to just say from the commission standpoint, we're going to use these ideas for our state work too, from a commission advocacy perspective. So this is just like a dream come true for us. And in light of that, one of our struggles has always been to get statewide representation to feed ideas to the commission. And so a couple of you suggested that we see who's here from different parts of the state. And I realize some people have left, but could you stand or wave if you're on the I-5 corridor? Okay. Southern Oregon. Yeah. Central Oregon. Okay. Eastern Oregon. Okay, we're gonna have to go there for the next. Oh yeah, there they are in the corner. Okay. And how about the coast? Okay, great. Well, that's really good to know. We'll probably know more from your registration too, so we can figure that out a little bit. And the other thing I wanted to say is that you'll get the information sent to you there if you gave us your email. So you'll get to see all the recommendations that you just heard. And then these are my notes from Anne. I'm supposed to tell you to wear those buttons. There's buttons on your table, and it says, ask me about the White House Conference on Aging. And that's so you can share what we've done. And then also to remind you to do the purple evaluation sheets, please. We need feedback. And if any of you are interested in the tour of the veterans facility that we heard about, there's some people meeting at 4:45, and you can get a tour right away. And then just before we go, I do have something for Anne. Anne needs to come up here. Okay, this has been very hard to hide, but this is thanks to this. So this is from the commission, and we thank you for your incredible work, man. Thank you. I mean, I'm telling you, this woman has not had a lot of sleep, so we need to be very kind to her. She's put her all into it, and it wouldn't have happened without her, so. All right, I think we're done, and I feel very inspired. I thank all the speakers, the panelists, the facilitators, the sponsors and contributors, the planning committee, the volunteers, and mostly I thank all of you for being here, and I'm really, really happy with the results. So bye for now. Samaritan Health and the Conference Center staff, the Medicaid Long-Term Care Quality and Reimbursement Advisory Council, AARP Oregon, the Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs, the Oregon Association of Area Agencies on Aging, CCTV Salem, Albany Volunteer Caregivers, and our fantastic conference planning committee.
Here in Salem as much as I can, because Salem is my home base.
American, young, old,